Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, I'm Antoinette, a New Zealander living in Germany. And I know that there are a lot of other expat YouTubers here in Germany, but I feel like one of the things that makes me a little bit different from the other expat YouTubers here is, well, obviously the fact that I'm a New Zealander, I'm a mum, I've got 2 children, but also the fact that I do not live in a big cosmopolitan booming German city like Berlin or Frankfurt or Munich. I live in a little village in the beautiful wine region of Würzburg. It's located in the lower part of Franconia, and it's actually the only wine region in the whole of Bavaria. And I have been living here for 5 years now. I really think that living in a very traditional German village as a foreigner, an expat, whatever you want to call me, is very different from living as an expat in a big city. Next year we're actually going to be moving. We're building a house right now, and we're moving not far at all from where we currently live. But I thought it would be kind of nice to look back and reminisce on my time here and, you know, share my experiences as a Kiwi, as a New Zealander living in a German village. So for the first 3 years that I was living in Germany, my husband Rob and I, we lived in a tiny little apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment in Würzburg. And Würzburg is a really gorgeous city. The population is about 125,000, so it's not a big city, but it still kind of has that city vibe. It's a really vibrant city, and I just love it. We absolutely loved our little apartment. It was perfect for us. It had a little balcony. It was really close to the city. It was just perfect when we were newlyweds. And then our little girl Amelia came along, and everything changed. Our whole entire world had turned upside down. And actually at the beginning it was fine living in this little apartment with Amelia, until she started to crawl, and she was everywhere, and we realized that this little apartment is no longer suitable for a small family. And so we had to start looking for a new apartment, a bigger apartment. So during that time that we outgrew our little Würzburg apartment, Rob decided that he wanted to continue some studies and become a full-time student. So obviously we didn't have a lot of money at the time, and we still had to move out and look for a bigger apartment. So we started looking for bigger apartments around Würzburg, and we just couldn't believe how expensive everything was. We were like, what are we gonna do? We can't stay here, but we can't afford to get a bigger apartment. So we started looking outside of Würzburg, and still in the Würzburg region. So we looked and looked and looked, and finally we found this old cobblestone house in this adorable little wine village, about 15 minutes drive from Würzburg, and it just happened to be right next to the town where my in-laws lived. So it was actually perfect. We applied for the house, we ended up getting it. We were so excited because it was double the size of the tiny little apartment we were living in Würzburg. It wasn't as modern, it was a little bit run down, it had a lot of character, you could say, but it had a lot more space for us. There was a little garden. The rent was also about the same as what we were paying in our tiny little apartment. So that was awesome. And the village was just adorable. It's the village that we still live in now. And honestly, I remember walking around the village for the first time feeling like I was in some kind of a fairy tale, like in Beauty and the Beast or something like that. It's a very traditional Bavarian Franconian style village with cobblestone streets and little crooked houses. And as I mentioned, it's a wine region, so we have a backdrop of beautiful vineyards all planted on a slope, and we're right next to the river. The river has a sandy area for the kids to play in the summertime, and in the little village centre there's a little Italian ice cream parlour, there's a cafe, there's restaurants, there's a bank, there's a bakery, there's a library, there is a winery, there's just lots going on, and it's just super adorable. So the house that we moved into was a double home. It's quite a common setup here in Germany, especially in the little villages. So our neighbours live below us, we live above, but there's 2 like separate homes. And I remember the first few days of living in our house, our neighbour from below came up with a big bouquet of beautiful flowers to say, welcome to the neighborhood, it's so great to have you. We invited her in, she had a coffee, she stayed for about an hour. We got to know her, we found out that she's a retired artist, that she's got a daughter, and it was just really nice. Like, it was a nice surprise. So over the next few weeks we got to know our other neighbors. We've got a really lovely family living next to us with 3 children. At the time they just had 1 little boy who was a year older than Amelia at the time. time, and they were just so warm and open and welcoming, and it was just so nice. We met the old lady across the road who's in her 80s. She'd been living in the same house for about 50 years, and she was just so sweet, and I was just so excited about having this kind of community feeling. So it actually didn't turn out to be all roses and sunshine like I had imagined. I soon realized that not all of the locals were as friendly and welcoming as our neighbors. A lot of them had lived in this village for generations, like they had inherited their home from their great grandparents, and it was a very sort of tight-knit, snobby, kind of cliquey community. We weren't exactly welcomed with open arms by some of the locals, and a lot of these people were very German. They probably weren't used to a lot of foreigners living in their village. I remember going for walks around the village with little Amelia in her baby carrier, and some of the locals just staring at me, looking at me like, who is this person, where is she from, and why the hell is she in our village? And that was the feeling that I got. Maybe they weren't thinking that, but that was kind of the feeling that I got. And I'm usually right with my instincts. I feel like that's what they were thinking. I remember smiling at people and saying hello, and they blatantly ignored me. And it was not a nice feeling. I didn't feel welcome in the little village. I felt like the community was very tight-knit. Everyone knew everybody, and we were just like these outsiders, these foreigners that came and kind of disturbed their little, you know, community. And also my husband Rob, he's not like a German. He was born in Poland, and even though he spent the majority of his life in Germany, he feels very German. I think in these kind of little villages he is looked at as a foreigner. And so we were like this foreign family that had moved to this little village, and people maybe were a little bit wary of us. They didn't know, you know, what we were like and what we were all about. And, you know, I remember taking Amelia to the playground, and some of the other mothers, they just totally ignored me. They didn't even acknowledge my existence. And I just remember feeling so lonely at the playground. Like no one would talk to me. I would smile at people, they wouldn't smile back. And I was like, what is going on here? I don't know. And I just wasn't used to that in New Zealand, and I was kind of a new mum, you know. I didn't spend a lot of time in the village because I didn't really feel welcome there. I spent a lot of time in Würzburg with my expat group. I would go maybe once or twice a week, and I also had a friend in the next village from me who is from Japan. She's married to a German, and we spent a lot of time together, and I would spend time with my in-laws. So yeah, I did feel a little bit lonely, you know, if I was in the village. But anyway, it gradually started to get better. I remember when summer came, and you know, it was starting to warm up and people were outside a lot more, and I would spend a lot of time with Amelia by the river. We'd go to the ice cream shop, and you know, we'd go for walks, and people were just a little bit more friendly for some reason. I think they just started to get used to us. You know, people in small villages talk, and they probably found out that I was from New Zealand and that I wasn't as bad as they thought I was. And I started to notice a lot more of the locals smiling at me and saying hello, and I started to feel a lot more welcome in the village for some reason. I realized that a lot of the locals were not as grumpy and snobby and serious as I originally thought they were. So it definitely took a while, and sometimes making friends and breaking through the barrier with Germans can be like getting blood out of a stone. It takes a long time and a lot of work and a lot of effort. So right now we're at the point where we basically know everybody in the village. We can walk through the village, everyone says hello, they smile, you know, everyone's really friendly, but it did take a long time to get to this point. But I finally feel really welcome here, and I actually love living in this little village. We have really wonderful neighbours who we can count on for anything. You know, if they need anything, we are there for them and they're there for us. I love the feeling of living in a wine region. It's just a beautiful part of Germany to live in. I feel like we've got the best of both worlds with the city so close, and then we can get away from it all and, you know, hang out in the village. So anyway, that's about all I've got for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I haven't mentioned exactly where we live for privacy reasons, and I know that some of you have worked out where we live because of the surroundings in some of our videos. So if you know where we live, please don't mention it in the comments section. I'd rather keep that private. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. I would love you to subscribe to my channel. Feel free to follow me on Instagram, and I will see you again really soon. Bye.